Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer. Tech Support said they're coming out as soon as they get the software update that'll close that portal. It'll be out of my hair eventually. Today I'm going to be reviewing some more stuff in the series on adventure-driven development. Now, it's like a foreign concept. It's like never been heard of, but people have been talking about this style of development for a long time. It's just the types that want to put everything in a category and preserve it and for all time and put it in a little box or put it in their little box and then preserve it for all time. The preservers, they have a hard time dealing with the things that some of us find unacceptable and that are willing to go on an adventure up the mountain to attack the dragon here, past the silver hordes, past the lead mines, past the dungeon grinds of Jira burn down slog feature factories, the lava lakes of direct competition, the tar pits of seemingly good ideas, the tunnels of fake agile doom and death marches. After you complete the tutorials and the personal projects, the senior lead roles, and you try to attack this thing, there's a reason. The only people that are kind of willing to do is like, this is unacceptable. He's like, this is unacceptable. Like, time to kick at, like, okay, we just can't deal with this anymore. And then when you pop through the other side, it's like, this is outstanding. Like the destroyers who are ready to let go of the thing they're on. People don't like to think about this. Is when the new thing is created, the old thing is destroyed. But what you get is like an outstanding because it was just unacceptable before. Okay, let's listen to Chris Crawford. Now, I heard him first in 1993, 94. I was working at Chaos Tools at a software development company. We were doing plugins for Photoshop. And I found out about this conference. I don't know how I found out about it. I don't even know if it exists. I've tried to look it up. There's no record of it. It's not at the game developers conference. It was like this hacker developer conference. It was like a 3-day thing. Super fun. We made a Newton control, those little Newton device, and control a Nerf gun. We made that during the session. It was super fun. Anyway, let's listen to Chris talk.
Another idea on getting creative. This is really difficult.
Sorry about the audio.
You've got to develop an appreciation, a respect for the psychology of the creative process. And to illustrate this is such a difficult point. I'd like to draw a very strange metaphor here. I'd like to say that the human psyche is like a whip. Now, you know how a whip works? This is not one of those ideas from the world of ideas.
He was eventually kicked out of the conference for doing this. At one time, he heard somebody, supposedly, that's the lore.
A whip is thick at one end, and it's thin at the other end. And the idea is you wiggle. You start at this end of the whip, and you wiggle it. You put a wave into the whip, and the wave starts traveling down the whip. Now, the wave has a constant amount of energy that doesn't go away. But as it travels down the whip, the whip gets smaller and smaller, and there's less and less mass to transmit the energy of the wave. So there's more and more energy per unit mass, and so the whip has to travel faster and faster to transmit that energy. And so by the time the wave reaches the tip of the whip, there's only a tiny amount of mass, and it has to move very, very fast to transmit that energy, and in fact it goes so fast that it breaks the speed of sound, and the whip cracks. Now, the human psyche, if you'll forgive some poetic excess here, the human psyche is sort of like a whip. That is, down at this end we have conscious, rational intellect, the type of thinking we do when we write a computer program, for example. You move further up the whip and you get into conscious, non-rational thinking, the type of thinking you do when you're thinking real fast and you couldn't actually write it down, what you're thinking down on a piece of paper, but you're still thinking. And you move further up and you get into conscious feelings, the emotions you have, the feelings you have that you know you have. You move further up, you get into subconscious emotion, the feelings you have that you don't know you have. And then at the end of the whip are the deepest, murkiest, most instinctive types of human mental activity. Now, creativity is sort of like a wave traveling down the whip. It really starts down here at the instinctive end of the psyche, and it travels down the whip. But there's a problem. You see, most of us live somewhere around here. Most of us, what we call me, is this guy here, and we're not even really aware of all of this. The real problem is some people refuse to acknowledge this part of their psyche. And so those creative impulses come traveling down the whip, and these people block the impulses. They stop it from going down. They try to consciously control the creative process. These poor fools go through life accomplishing nothing. It's a waste. It's a shame, because it's a waste of human talent, a waste of human potential. If you would be creative, engage your entire psyche. You must be aware of the instinctive side of your psyche. Carl Jung once wrote, "One of the most difficult tasks that men can perform, however much others may despise it, is the invention of good games, and it cannot be done by men out of touch with their instinctive selves."
All right, so he's talking about the adventure. He's talking about once you have a graph and you're involved with all the parts of your psyche that build it up. You've been through these things. You've been through these terrible, this crazy filter effect, and you still want to try and do something. You still want to go for it. You still have that in you. Yeah, this is what it takes. This is what it takes. Okay, I'm going to talk about a lot of companies and organizations I've gotten involved have been very obsessed with source code and documentation and all this other stuff, and they lose because they want to preserve and control, create the structure that contains and makes them comfortable, right? They don't want to deal with the creator's destroy. They just want you to preserve it and like as if it was in stone. And they feel like once you have that, you will have it forever, right? It just doesn't work that way. It's a cycle. Sorry. Software, if you're going to be in software development, you're going to get very uncomfortable being a preserver. Because of the software, the nature of the software is it changes. I don't know if you knew that. Stuff changes all the time.
What's the value of your source code? Like seriously, take a moment to think about this for your current project. If you had to put a dollar value on your code, what would that be? In this video, I want to argue that even for bigger projects, this value is probably much closer to zero than you might think. I also want to give you a new perspective on programming as a whole, inspired by Turing Award winner Peter Nauer. I was confronted with this question a few years ago when I was working at a smaller company doing indoor navigation software. So basically Google Maps in big buildings like malls, airports, and factories. There was also an augmented reality mode, so we could display arrows on the floor that show your destination, or additional information like virtual signs, or real-time info about machines in factories. It was a pretty cool project, and the tech stack was super interesting. There was a low-level computer vision component written in C++ for cross-platform support, a native layer for iOS and Android, cross-platform rendering in WebGL, and a pretty complex admin interface for the web. And this project started in the early 2010s, so there was no AR kit or AR core that made it easy to include some AR like today. We actually had to write that all ourselves with some computer vision libraries, and we even worked together with a research institute to get this to work. So basically, this wasn't just something anyone could easily recreate. On the team, we just implicitly assumed that our code was really valuable and one of our major assets. Then, at some point, a new manager joined the company, and he had mostly worked in bigger companies before, and he was super concerned with security, so he argued that we shouldn't keep our source code in a cloud-hosted GitHub repo. He was worried that Microsoft, the owner of GitHub, might just be able to take our code and build a competing service. Now, that's ridiculous, of course.
So that manager is a preserver, right? He's doing the preserver thing. And big corporations, if you are not in the mindset of a preserver, you're going to be kicked out because you're going to want to do, you're a destroyer and you cause problems, or you're a creator and you got bad ideas that haven't been tested. We don't know because we haven't gone through the filtering process. That the only way these preservers show up is that something has gone through the filtering process of the climb up the mountain to track a dragon. Somebody did it. Somebody somewhere did it. That's the only reason. The preservers can show up. Okay. Now the guy Philomenics in this channel, great channel by the way. I'm gonna subscribe to it. He is an adventurer. He's a creator destroyer. Right, he thinks a lot of these people that haven't really considered this thing, because what you're really asking people when you ask them for your new ideas, right? Is you're saying you're going to destroy the old one, but I like the old one. Well, if you want the new thing, we have to have it. We have to go destroy that. So they're like, and then a lot of creators go like, well, why wouldn't you like my idea? It's like because you're asking me to get rid of another one. There's only so many room in the stack that you can actually run on as a human being that we can take it and like figure out and say worthwhile. Like most people do not want to go past the Silver Horde. They don't want to go fight this thing because this thing is deadly. It'll mess you up. You can fail. Most people do, and it's like really harsh and brutal. And there are a lot of people back in these environments, trying to figure out like how do we attack this thing. And most people just like they give up after a while. It's like just easier to do a Silver Horde. Let's attack somebody else's monsters. Let me just I just want to do the code. I want to do the code. And then you get caught in the traps of the lead mines and the dungeon grinds. It's like you can't. It's like preservers want the new things, but they don't want to change. It's like sorry, that's just how it goes, man.
Of course, Microsoft would never do something like this. Like they would never build an AI that just uses your private code as training data. Like that would never happen, right? No. But seriously, back then, this got me thinking, why did this feel ridiculous? Like, if we leave all ethical and legal concerns aside for a moment, why wouldn't Microsoft or any other big company just use our code if they wanted to build a competing service?
Why didn't they?
And then, going even further, I thought, what would happen if we just open sourced everything? If we put it all in a public repo with an open license like MIT? Our investors would probably have thought that we've gone crazy, but other than that, what direct impact would that have had on our company?
Because the investors are these guys, right? These guys are like, what are you doing? The source code, that's all. See, all they can see is the source code, right? All they can see is the documentation. They don't want to go look into this stuff here that's changing all the damn time. And over here, what's gone. I want to see what's the thing that's always going to be there or changing very little, or I don't have to look at it very often, or if I look back at it, it'll be the same thing again. Like they get very uncomfortable with how the world actually operates.
Thinking about this for a while, I think the answer back then would have been absolutely nothing would have changed. You know,
Yeah.
we were still a young startup, so our code was changing pretty drastically every couple of weeks. Sometimes we change major parts of the architecture or rewrite components because the requirements changed so quickly as we discovered new things about our customers. And as it often goes in such a situation, the code quality was pretty bad. Half the time the build system was broken, testing and documentation was basically non-existent, and it was unlikely that anyone from outside the team would even have gotten the thing up and running.
Yeah, that's normal. That's the standard if you're actually doing something interesting and pushing things through, going to the edges of what's known, dealing with this guy. Dealing with this guy is a major pain in the neck. Like, he's like, you can't just like, you have to go back and forth between like unacceptable, astounding. It's like boop, 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 boop. And it's a small number of people that tolerate of that stuff. I'm not tolerant. No one's tolerant. We humans don't like that. We want to just can we have today be the same as tomorrow? Most people, that's how they are because they don't find it unacceptable. They're not willing to do what it takes to make it outstanding, right?
It would be outdated a moment later. So, of course, Microsoft would never take our code. They'd be much faster just building it themselves from scratch than trying to understand the crummy code that we just hacked together.
Oh, yeah. And that's when you're brought, like a lot of us are brought into these projects where everyone just gives up on it because the design was so poor and or this process had gotten too mungled. And they just want to come in and just need to fix a few bugs to the source code that we have the original team's long gone. We can't talk to them. They didn't have no documentation because they were going so damn fast, right? They're going so damn fast, right? They were changing through stuff, ripping through code. They didn't care.
But okay, I hear you say, maybe your code was crummy, but my code is beautiful. All right, so let's take a step back and assume the opposite for a moment. Beautifully written, clean code with complete test coverage, one-click build process, well-written documentation of architecture and components. Would this actually have changed the situation? I really don't think so. You see, in 2017, there was an incident of a pretty high-profile source code theft. The name of the company was appropriately Panic. It's a company that makes high-quality software for Mac and iOS, and they've also released some games like Untitled Goose Game and Firewatch. They had the full source code of most of their apps stolen by hackers. The attackers threatened that they'd release the source code and demanded a ransom. But Panic refused to pay, and in a blog post, they went through all the worst-case scenarios of what the hackers could do with the code. They said that the worst thing that could happen would be people building cracked versions of their apps that are full of malware. But that was already happening anyways, even before the source code was stolen, just like with most software. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure this was a pretty bad blow for Panic, and I'm not arguing that stolen source code can't be damaging. But was Panic worried about competitors stealing their high-quality code? In a blog post, they wrote that they weren't too concerned with that, mainly because it would quickly become outdated. That source is already missing a ton of fixes and improvements we committed over the last week alone, and 6 months from now, it will be missing major critical new features. In short, it's old and getting older. So this is really interesting, right? Yeah. Here we have a multi-million-dollar company basically saying that they don't worry about competitors using their code. So if the value is not in the code and documentation, where is it? And why is writing new code sometimes faster than understanding and modifying existing code? I couldn't wrap my head around these questions until I stumbled upon this article.
For sure. So that's what Ken Thompson discovered. Like, we just start over. He was on the Multics thing. He was trying to just need a few bugs. Just need to fix a few bugs. Let's bring in the best guy we know on operating systems, Ken Thompson, and just let's bring him into Multics and say, hey, just need a few bugs. He's like, after he was doing that for a while, he was like, screw that, you guys. We need to go up and do something else. And he's like, we're going to do something brand new. I'm going to go fight directly this thing. And he found out it was this little guy. Because it was on the PDP, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm 3 weeks away from an operating system.
Programming as theory building by Turing.
He found the cave entrance. That's what Ken did.
Existing code. I couldn't wrap my head around these questions until I stumbled upon this article, Programming as Theory Building, by Turing Award winner Peter Nauer. If you've ever taken a compiler course, you might have used his work already, since he's the N in Bacchus Nauer form, a notation for specifying programming languages that is still in use today. In his article, Nauer gives his view on this surely very simple and easy to answer question. What is programming? He says that most people view programming as a production process, and he calls this the production view.
Okay, I'm going to get in the next video I do, I'm going to be talking about where the mindset of this production concept comes from, where the Scrum stuff comes from, where people turn from Agile from what it really was designed for, which is really this adventure-driven stuff. Really, that's the core of it. But it was too soft. It was like, I'm going to be pansy-wansy, soft. It's like, no, you got to be really... The people that go after this dragon, they are warriors, man. They are priest-level warriors that are like trying to make something, and they're not just going after this thing. They're going after this wider thing that they see that's possible once it got unlocked. Once they were able to build a deal with this dragon and keep going up the mountain, past its thing with to this other thing. You're like, hey, Ken wanted to do games, man. And so guess what? A lot of other people did too. I wonder why. Well, who would have thought that? So yeah, so with this production view of software coming from, why does it dominate the industry? Even though people like to talk about, we did Agile and we're going to change and modify and pivot and all that other stuff. It's like, most companies just, they cannot deal with that. They cannot deal with that level of, they need this to meet expectations, man. And to keep going as is and don't rock the boat because it's very confusing and you're asking me to do things I don't even know how to do, and I hired you to do them. I don't know how to do that stuff.
Of programming. He argues that some empirical observations in software projects can't be explained with this view, but they can with his alternative theory-building view of programming. I'm going to explain this with some real-life examples from one of my previous projects. I was working at a factory where the workers were still using paper processes to document their work. We made a custom tablet app to digitize this process. Now, in the production view of programming, we of course have programmers. They get input from external stakeholders, and they observe a slice of the real world that's relevant to the problem. They then take this input and produce technical artifacts as output, so basically code and documentation. The problem with this view, according to Nawa, is that the technical artifacts are the final output, while the programmers are viewed as easily replaceable machines that just produce.
Because in the production view of things, on a production line, when we already know we're building, and we just need to build 10,000 of them, yes, it totally makes sense. Replaceable cogs, and those people kind of are that type of person that would want to go work in a factory, have to go work for a factory, or they don't never been told this stuff about how this creative process works, and they've been told their whole lives through the 12 years of indoctrination, by the way, and public school education, that you need to do the middle, and if you go out to the edges, we will snip you. Yeah, so this is these things down here, the fake agile down here. This is where that comes from, because that is the method that's been taught to the people who are managers. The people who are running the corporations, they have been taught by their Harvard MBAs that every single production process, no matter what it is the same, right? That's been told. The thing is, it's not the same. The design process of coming up with these technologies, these tools, these products, these services, they don't know how it's done. Or if they do know how it's done, they're not telling anybody because that's a trade secret. And even if we told you, it's like, it's this stuff. It's going in, being aware of your environment, being curious, having a lot of sleep, being not dicked around with a ticket system. And how many points have you got on that Jura ticket? None of that. That's not part of it. That's not part of it. You can't productize this knowledge work. It's totally, a lot of it's random. A lot of it's just tacit. It's just a vibe. It's art. It's like how you think about this, your customer, ethics, morals.
This output. In contrast, in his theory-building view, the focus is on the programmer, who again observes the real world, and as they write the code in their head, they also build a mapping between the code and the real world. Each piece of the real world that's relevant to the problem needs to be mapped to some technical artifact.
Absolutely.
That could, for example, be a specific class, method, or data structure, an overall architectural decision, or maybe simply a line in the documentation.
Correct.
The main difference to the production view is that the code is just a side product. The real product, the real output of this process, is the theory, the mapping between the real world and the code. So basically, the arrows in this diagram are the real output. Everything else is just a side product. Now you might say, well, why don't we just take this theory and put it into written documentation as well? Then it would be really easy to onboard new developers to our code so they can be productive really fast.
Yeah, it's just the easiest ever. A big old pile of Confluence documents. Oh, yeah. I'm going to go through all that stuff right away.
But Nawa argues that exactly this step isn't possible. He writes, the code and its documentation has proved insufficient as a carrier of some of the most important design ideas. A main claim of the theory-building view of programming is that an essential part of any program, the theory of it, is something that could not be conceivably expressed, but is inextricably bound to human beings. Meaning
it's tacit. It's with the people, that group of adventurers who are not replaceable cogs. You can't just go plug a Ken Thompson in. You can't just go plug a Dennis Ritchie. Just let me go find a Dennis Ritchie. No, they are attracted by the quest. They are attracted by whatever the thing is you're doing. You just got to be in the right place, right time, with the right set of people. And maybe you can put yourself in the middle of that. It's not always replicable. It's always changing form. It's always in different places. But you're only going to see that if you're engaged, right? If you're just going on LinkedIn and dude, apply, it's not going to be there. That's down here. Those missions are down here. This one is for people that have been down here. And like, oh, this sucks. and they still have wits around them. They're like, okay, I'm going to try and do something different. Like the examples I've been showing so far, the people are like, nobody told them how to do that stuff. They just did it. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't even ask for forgiveness. Like, I'm just doing it. Like, if you don't like it, that's your problem.
Now, that's a pretty strong claim, but I think that Now has some really good arguments for it.
Yeah.
He says that there are 3 different aspects of the theory that are just in the programmer's minds and go beyond what's visible in the source code or documentation. These 3 aspects are intangible, so they're difficult or even impossible to communicate indirectly via written documentation. For the first one of these aspects, Now says the programmer must be able to explain, for each part of the code and for each of its overall structural characteristics, what aspect or activity of the world is matched by it.
Exactly.
So basically,
this is like worldview. This is like how you see reality. I mean, a lot of people think of this like these machines are all about the code. I mean, the code is just a way to get things from one place to another and how to like compute something that you think is the way a model how the world works. It's not the actual way it is. It's just how you think it is. And sometimes and the whole thing is we're trying to map that onto our customers, right? Trying to get aligned with what our customers, how the customers see it and want to deal with this stuff in the way they want to deal with it. And it's always moving around, man. So it's like you're chasing the dragon.
someone new to the project should be able to point at any piece of code, and the original programmer can tell us how it's mapped to a specific object.
Right, and that's what you do when you're onboarded properly with people that have been there and they know how the process is going on. And there's somebody right there, yeah. But I've been on. This is another thing that's happened to me multiple times. I've been plopped into these projects. There's no one around. There's no documentation. All you have is a source code, and you're expected to not only understand it, understand the mindset, but understand the things the edges they cut, without knowing any context of why this stuff is the way it is. And you're expected to give you an estimate of what the points on that is. I have no idea. You're asking me, it's like, why does onboarding take so long? Because you got rid of the team that had all the tacit knowledge. And all you got left is this detritus called source code. We just start over. Look, if you get rid of the whole team, just start over. If you have just one person left, it may be best to take the knowledge that they've learned from working on the team to start over. Like, I cannot understand. It's like people believe the source code is some sort of, we spent $2 million on that source code. No, you didn't. You spent $2 million on that team who came up with this result. This thing. That's you spent money on the team. You didn't spend money on the source code. The source code was just an end result. That's not what that's that production mindset. How many lines of code did he produce this week?
Or situation in the real world. And the other way around, of course. This direction is even more difficult, as Noah writes. By far, the largest part of the world will, of course, lie outside the scope of the code, being irrelevant in the context.
Yeah, exactly. The tacit knowledge of everyone around who dared to go attack this thing. And you're gonna leave little notes along the way. No, that's not gonna do it, dude. That's not gonna be enough. Sorry.
However, the decision that a part of the world is relevant can only be made by someone who understands the whole world.
Yeah.
So basically,
yeah. Someone like Kentov's like, I've been in the pit. I got the secret key to the door to the mainframe from midnight to 8 a.m. and I banged on that thing. That thing's a piece of crap for what it's actually doing. Oh no, this is unacceptable. This has to change. He's like, boom. And how many people got that knowledge at that time? Maybe 5, maybe 4. But who was outside doing the punk rock moves? Outside the system going, hey, I'm only going to get involved with you and it benefits me. I understand how this game is run. I'm seeing the systems. I'm seeing this how put together. And I have a soul left from all this, from doing this crazy stuff. And I'm doing my own thing. And like, I'm not joining Bell. Bell's joining me. I'm getting control of Bell's resources. Bell isn't using me as a resource. I'm using them as a resource. That's the attitude that these guys have. I've seen it. I've been in it. I've done it myself. It's like, it's what it takes.
Not everything in the real world has a direct mapping to source code, and of course, we as programmers have to know and decide which parts are actually relevant to the problem at hand. For bigger projects, I just don't see how documenting all this information would be practical.
Ridiculous.
For example, the factory app that I mentioned.
Yeah, I've not been asked to do this before, and I'm just like, how about you ask me, and like we can talk about it, we'll do a video. I don't know. You're asking me to type this huge document. It's taking way longer. If I have to do this for every single decision that we're doing to make this project is going to die. And it did.
Mentioned earlier, was itself pretty simple, but the underlying business processes were super complex. There were different assembly lines and machines involved. Also, the environment was changing and evolving quite often. Workers changing their shifts around, the Wi-Fi in the factory would go down or be unavailable in some areas, machines would break down, stuff like that. And downtime in the factory was really expensive, so the app had to be prepared to handle all these situations. So even if we had the time and budget to document all this, I really don't see how anyone would have benefited from that documentation.
Well, the people that benefit are the people who are trying to turn you into a cog, sir, who want to cogify you. If we can just document his procedure fully, then we'll know all the things that he knows, and we can just replace him with someone cheaper in about a month and a half, because this guy's a pain in the ass. He just can't figure out how to get this thing done finally. He doesn't have all the answers to day one when we started this thing.
It would probably have been a couple hundred pages, and it would have been really difficult finding the information that you're actually looking for. But difficult is not impossible, which is why I think this is actually the weakest argument Noah makes for the theory building view. So let's take a look at the other two arguments. The second one is that for each mapping, we could have chosen an entirely different implementation in the code. So according to Noah, the programmer having the theory of the program can explain why each part of the program is what it is. In other words, is able to support the actual code with a justification of some sort. So basically an explanation of why we made certain technical decisions.
Right. So if you go through some of my projects, I kind of just do this because I kind of need it for my own looking back and looking at this stuff. How I put it. And when you present it in this way, it makes it also cohesive. So all my projects that I published, I'll have the last Fred's road trip and the cloud view. I did a step-by-step, just quick video, shows each one of the sections, what I was thinking, why I put them there. Not typing it out and seeing somebody type it all out. I don't need to see that. I just need a quick explanation of what it was. And that's the section for that time and moment and space, and you keep going. What? We have ways of communicating this stuff now. I don't know why developers don't want to get on camera. Oh, you think they're talking. Yes, but what happens is we're going to have AI tools that take these videos and condensify them. And we already have them now, so you don't have to watch the whole thing. But if you need to, it's good to go in there because there's stuff that's in there that you need to know. Because when you're sitting, the only way I've been properly onboarded was on somebody else who knows the product, was sitting right there, and I can go ask them questions, and that's the only way it went well. The only time, other times when they had the whole team fired, and they have the contractor overseas, the only ones left on the team because they're making 10 times more than any job that you get over there, and they're willing to put up with all the baloney that's been going on in the company, and they don't really want to onboard you because they know that they're about to get fired, right? Because now I'm the new guy. It's silly. This stuff is all silly.
He goes on to explain that this justification can't just be pressed into a set of rules, but instead requires intuition and experience. In my opinion, programming is a lot about choosing the right trade-offs.
Yeah, and people like, no, it's about leak code. It's about grinding on the leak code. That's what software development really is. If you want to get into Google, and do a day of tunnels, a fake agile doom death march, or a dungeon grind, a Jira burn down slog, feature factory, then get your leak code on. Get your leak code on.
Experience, and compressing all these technical decisions, which are often based on intuition, into a written document seems really impractical to me.
Impractical? Impossible. Completely impossible. But we have to understand, where is this coming from? It's coming from the corporate people who are trying to turn you into a cog. And they're always, as soon as you have a successful, by the way, I have to say this too, if you slay this dragon enough to get a road built up there and get some successful customers, oh, you best believe you're going to want to have people in here like this. You're going to want this preserver to come in and preserve, but that's what he does. You can't expect to take one of these guys that's been in these organizations, preserving it, and expect to come into your organization and rejuvenate it. It's not going to happen. And I don't know where this thing comes from, but I guess it's the marketing and advertising stock pump guys talking about how everyone at Google is magical and is an adventure-driven developer like this, that they're all doing that. Not that they get their products getting subsumed. Please just go play video games and not work on anything and don't destroy our stuff that we already spent $1 billion making. Can we just acquire your company for $2 million and make it just shut up for a while?
For major architectural decisions, it makes complete sense to document this. But imagine you had to justify in writing every single technical decision you make. Oh,
that's ridiculous. That's that's the preserver who thinks he's actually doing his job properly because he's trying to cogify you, right? Because if he can get you to document every single decision, he can bring in other preservers who will totally go through and try to interpret as well as they can all the paperwork and all the documentation. And what happens then to those projects? They just like grind to a halt.
I think this would drive me insane, and I wonder how much value this would actually
Yeah. You better believe it would
provide to a newcomer who's being onboarded to the project.
I mean, it just depends what kind of newcomers you got. You got guys willing to slog down there and do your chicken feature factories. I mean, you might get away with it for a year, 2, 3, maybe. But somebody's going to come. Somebody else is going to come along and go, nah. We're one of these guys down here that you've kicked out of the team because you got to get somebody cheaper to do it for $10 an hour cheaper, whatever. Now he's kicked out. He's like, some of those guys, like most of them aren't gonna do shit, but some of those guys are gonna come and attack you.
Also, for each problem, there's an infinite number of possible implementations that we could have chosen, and new approaches or architectures are being proposed every day. So we wouldn't just have to document why we chose the current implementation, but also why we didn't choose any of the millions of other possible implementations. Exactly.
So that's all intuition. That's like Ken Thompson, when he was building his operating system, he started from a disk access scheduling, some piece of software that he was just testing. He was just testing out. Well, I mean, he was probably thinking about how to do some operating system was just better than what he just experienced with Multics. Yeah.
So I think here it's pretty clear that it's impossible to document this aspect of the theory exhaustively. But now let's get to now.
Right, but the preserver guys just really, really want. They have been told and convinced that, and they have evidence, right? The preserving is the right way to go. You want to keep that stock price high. We got to go on 3 vacations this year. What?
Now's third, and in my opinion, strongest argument for the theory building view, which is that the real world is constantly changing. And with those changes come new requirements. We as programmers then have to decide how similar the new use case is to the features that are already built into the program. Like, can we implement this functionality with any of the existing code? Or do we need to build entirely new components or abstractions to cover this use case?
And I've been brought into projects that were asking, like, could you just take our existing thing and just add and change and do this other thing to it? It's like, I don't know. Was it set up to do that? Or are you just trying to get it done as quickly as possible before you ran out of money and we're out of business? And I'm coming in to save your bacon because you pissed off the original team by burning them out. Could you just add a thing? Yeah, we can, but we're gonna have to do that in a better way than burning people out, right? That's the thing. Like, yeah, okay, we can do that, but you can't burn people out that are good because they'll just quit and go do something else.
Nala writes, designing how a modification is best incorporated into an established program depends on the perception of the similarity of the new demand with the operational facilities already built into the program.
Correct. Meaning, was it set up for this? Was it set up to extend? Was it set up just to get the thing out that last week to ship to some arbitrary date that's nobody really cares about anyway? Just because you wanted to get there to American really fast and get there to prove that you can have something profitable before money runs out. Yeah, so there's certain processes that are maintainable, and I go into it a little bit here, like some of these things right here. Some thoughts on software development, like you have to, right? You think about the why before the how. Like, can we use less language features? Do we have to use a Turing complete TypeScript interpreter? TypeScript. Do we have to have Turing complete loops in the TypeScript system? No. Do we need that? Can we make it easier to maintain? Can we make it easier to extend? Can we make it easier to monitor? Can we make it easier to onboard a new developer to the team? These are never. I have never been on a project that's like these in consideration. It's always been the same problems. It's always been the same problems over and over and over again, and they never think about this ahead of time. And it's like, okay, if we're gonna do we're gonna do a quick one to see a prototype. We're gonna do like maybe a better prototype, but when we get to like actually doing to bigger groups of people, bigger number of customers, this is really becomes important, right? And we have to throw away the stuff we wrote. We have to be okay with understanding the knowledge, the tacit knowledge collection is the important thing with the people you have there who you treat well to keep going and build another product that's even better than the one they just built, and they're willing to throw it away. The value is not in the source code. It's not there. That was a way of us all getting together to what are the actual requirements. Let me see here. Okay, my computer just had a little hiccup there. But anyway, yeah, so it's like that's really where the knowledge lies is with the people. And these preserver types, they have been told that we're all replaceable cogs. And they said with everything is a production process, no matter what you call it, but it's not. Knowledge work is not a production process. Sorry, it's not. And the sooner we kind of get some agreement here that knowledge work is not a production process, and it never will be. And if you think it will be, your whatever business that you're doing in that fashion is open for attack, and will eventually be attacked because it's not a production line.
I think here it's pretty clear that this is impossible to put into any kind of written documentation, since it involves making decisions on how to deal with changes in the real world that we haven't anticipated yet. Otherwise, we could have just incorporated them into the design of the original program.
Exactly. If we already knew, and that's the thing about building it 3 times, is that, we kind of know now, at least for time being. And we're not trying to support some limping piece of crap that we built in a hurry anyway, just as proof of concept.
Please. Let me give you another real-life example from the factory app. So after having the app in production for a while, we realized that the data entry was somehow inconsistent. It took us a while to investigate, but then we found out that this was because of some secret smoke breaks that the factory workers took and that management didn't know about.
Oh, so how were you supposed to know about those kinds of things, which are rife with every single project? There's got this kind of stuff in there. You don't know about that? How long does it take to estimate that? We didn't even know it was there until you got into it. You had somebody looking at it going, hey, wait a second, people are taking smoke breaks. It's like, did the managers all say, okay, remember to put the smoke break thing in there? It's like, did you put a ticket for that? Did you get a ticket for that? What was your point value on that?
Once we figured this out, it was super easy for us in the core dev team to add a simple addition to the code to deal with this case. But I think if we had handed the code over to the client already, it could have been possible that they'd spend weeks to fix this, since they didn't know where exactly to make changes to the code for this. Of course, it would have been impossible to write down any hints or guidance for dealing with this case in advance, since we didn't anticipate this at all. In my experience, such things happen all the time in software. And only those that deeply understand the program can implement new use cases while keeping the original structure of the program intact. Now also brings up a few similar...
And you have to build it in a way that you might expect that those things might happen. Like you have to go down in here and see, go through all that stuff. Oh, you didn't put points and tickets, and now it's going to be 16 weeks delayed because you forgot about this gizmo operating thing over here. Oh, okay. Right? Like... You can't, like, the knowledge work is exploratory. And you don't know, it's like, well, how long is it going to take you to get to Lake 16? I don't know. I don't even know where that is. What are you talking about? It's like we're exploring. We're developing and exploring at the same time. And we're writing the evidence of our journey is the source code. It's not the actual thing. The actual thing is up here. And these guys cannot stand that. They cannot stand that. They cannot deal with the fact that that's how that things are, because they have been told everything is a production process, and the people on the production line are idiots, and you have to tell them everything. So when you idiot production line worker is come up and tell them, hey, this other thing is like, they go, what? That's why they're all freak out all the time. What? How could you? What? I'm the best. I have look at all the letters after my name. I'm the best. And you go up, factory worker, and you come up and tell them, hey, we didn't really build it to maintain it. We didn't build it to extend it. We didn't build it to monitor it. We didn't build it to onboard it. You built it because you wanted to get your thing out in 16 weeks or 5 weeks or 2 weeks or next week or this weekend. You want it out this weekend? We cut all that stuff out. You want all that stuff built in? It's going to take more time. And we have to think about it ahead of time. And we have to think about it every time we make a change. And it might be appropriate, version 3. Version 1 and 2, it's not appropriate. You just have to be along for the ride, Mr. Preserver.
Case studies where a different dev team that took over the original code was struggling to make changes. Instead, they made additions
that never happens.
that destroyed its power and simplicity.
Oh, that never happens either.
They didn't make use of the existing abstractions built into the program, but instead came up with their own less elegant solution.
And why would they? Why would they look at the original ones that are already in there? We don't know. Those people left. Those people are all gone. We have no idea how that stuff works. It looks amazing, but I get a 2-week sprint deadline, and we need to get this thing out the door, or I'm about to be fired because I can't complete tickets on time. Oh, that never happens either? Oh.
Creating some kind of Frankenstein code monster. So I think that altogether, these 3 arguments make a good case for the fact that the theory can't be put into any written documentation. But does that mean we're just screwed? That we can't ever transfer the theory from one programmer to the other? Now says it's still possible, but it requires personal interaction. What is required?
And it requires like understanding in time on the requirement on the part of management. This is part of the knowledge work. We're not doing a production line. We're not banging out widgets, man.
Is that the new programmer has the opportunity to work in close contact with the programmers who already possess the theory. So
look at that. Look, you have to have human-to-human contact. Well, what do you know? Wow, maybe that team that built the thing for you, maybe it's pretty important to have them stick around for a while, or at least be access, or at least have on good terms. How's that? Even just that. You would think that these people with these millions of dollars of software would have the common sense to, if you do have to let someone go, at least be on good terms with them. No? Fuck them? Okay.
To be able to become familiar with the place of the program in the wider context of the relevant real-world situations, and so as to acquire the knowledge of how the program works and how unusual program reactions and program modifications are handled within the program theory.
In other words, the tacit knowledge of all the things that they went through to get to that point, to the point where you actually think it's important that the value that they were messing with this dragon enough that it was able to get something of value going. That's all in the people, man. I know. You really, 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 really don't want that to be like that because you've been told by the Harvard and the Yale MBA programs that every process is completely interchangeable with every other. And they haven't been catching up on latest developments. It's not. Software is a completely other animal. It has all this other stuff going on. Taste, ethics, morality, creativity, art, sensitivity, awareness, being in somebody else's shoes, the ability to be in somebody else's shoes, to be like one of the people that actually using this stuff. Not, no, I'm gonna hire a bunch of really good engineers. They're just gonna really get it done. Just make them work 60 hours a week. They'll get it done.
He even compares these interactions to teaching a skill like writing or learning a musical instrument.
Yeah.
A professional concert pianist also wouldn't be able to teach you how to play a certain piece just by writing down stuff or making recordings. You need personal interaction with them to properly learn from them. I think overall, the theory building view really helps answer our initial questions. Source code itself has little value since it's unable to communicate the full theory. And this is also why it's often faster to write a new program from scratch than trying to understand and modify one.
Boy, trying to get these preservers to say, hey man, it might be time to start over. Or maybe you should have been thinking about starting over from the beginning. What do you start over? I've spent millions of dollars on that source code. No, you didn't. No, you spent millions of dollars on people's knowledge work that they all collected up that you don't seem to understand where this stuff goes. It goes inside the people. I know we don't want this context-free, like just intelligence, like just floating around, willing to I just do contract with them and then they do the thing and then I take away the thing and I use it and make the millions of dollars and he just sits over there and goes, oh, okay. So I give you the golden egg, you just take it away from me and you think that's how it works? These people.
Already exists. Because then you'd have to rebuild the entire theory of the program in your head. And depending on your background, it's often easier to just build an entirely new theory that fits your experience and perception of the world. I think this is also why onboarding in software projects is often so slow. And it's just crazy.
Well, because it's not designed for that, right? Do we think about it ahead of time when we're down in the slog trying to meet some silly deadline? That how are we going to onboard this? It's like that. No.
In the industry, where turnover is so high that people change jobs every few years.
Well, why wouldn't you? When all these guys are trying to shove everybody into a cog in a box, and they've been told all you do is leak grind, and then all the people doing the interviewing just give them a leak code. They don't understand that's been gamed. They gamed the fuck out of that system, right? So the only way to get more money and to get more because all these things are the same down here, right? The dungeon grind, the tons of fake, it's all the same crap down here. They're not doing that stuff because they don't know. They don't know. They don't want it. They don't even care. That's why there's so much opportunity. There's so much stuff that's just garbage, waiting for someone to come along and go, I'm going to do that one better. How's that? I mean, half the cost, 1/10 the people, completely less the hassle, focus on the customer, figure out what they want, and change with the times.
Even though so much value is tied up in an individual contributor. I think companies would be well advised to not treat developers as replaceable cogs in a machine, but instead realize that a lot of the domain knowledge they've built up over the years can't be easily replaced.
Oh! Have you ever tried discussing this with these people?
Look, we're just going to go ahead and ship this thing offshore. I'm sure it'll work out fine. Skipping time zones and different ethical apparatus and different culture and completely different focus. Don't even know what the customer have. Can't talk to the customer. That's going to work out real great. We'll be fine.
And all those companies are open for direct competition. They have now lowered the barrier so low that you can just come in and take it. And they're going to go, what happened? We had a burgeoning business. We had all the mainframe accounting software. It's like, oh, yeah, really? Oh, really? You don't think it's possible that the micro mini computers are going to take your lunch? You don't think that's possible? Oh, no, that would never be possible.
To be built up again from scratch. I also think that our tooling, so programming languages, IDE, be easily replaceable cogs in a machine, but instead realize that a lot of the domain knowledge they've built up over the years can't be easily replaced. And
cannot be replaced. Easily? No, it can't be replaced. This is just gone. Boom. And you're like, I get source code. It's like, no, you don't.
has to be built up again from scratch. I also think that our tooling, so programming languages, IDEs, version control, could do a much better job at helping to transfer the theory from one programmer to the other. Imagine a world.
It's really good about the organization. The tooling can help a little bit, but it's really about the organization and building and like not having too many of these guys around. Having guys like this and guys like this around, right? The old man and the young buck. You gotta have a little bit of this. Keep them in accounting. Like, don't let them near the product or marketing or source code or development teams. Please just leave them alone. Just keep the lights on, okay? And we'll let the other stuff happen with us guys.
Where you could just open up any big open source project on GitHub, immediately understand the code, and make changes to it in a single day. Right now, if you'd want to make changes
that's a pipe dream, buddy.
to a big project, like let's say the Linux kernel or a browser engine or something like that, it would probably be a mistake to go in by just reading the code. Instead, you'd probably want to read some kind of overview of the overall structure and modules, or even better, watch a video or do a live session with someone walking you through the code and explaining the parts that are relevant to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and you're going to have to prove your worth to take the time from those guys, right? You're going to have to prove your worth by slogging it out in this crap to the point, and don't get caught in a silver horde, right? Going after somebody else's dream, right? You got to prove yourself. You're just gonna drop it. I'm gonna drop it in the Linux kernel and do a couple updates. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to see my updates. I just learned about this project 2 days ago. I've watched all the videos. I'm sure they'll accept my PR.
Isn't it a bit silly that the fastest way to understand code is not to just go and read it? It's crazy that most developers, myself included, actually don't read other people's source code on a regular basis. Imagine a writer who themselves doesn't read many other books, or a musician who doesn't listen to a lot of music. That's just crazy. I think this is a failing of our current programming languages and tooling. I'd love to see a programming environment that builds on the theory building view as a foundation and optimizes for the quick transfer of the theory between
Yeah, I don't know. That's where art comes in. That's where all this other stuff, art, taste, what you're leaving in, what you're leaving out, what you're focusing on, what you're letting completely irrelevant. What ideas are you blending in together? You can't just put a graph up on a screen and convey that stuff. It's all encompassing. When you're going after the dragon, you're bringing your whole full self and everybody else's full selves on the C team to go after this thing and with their full might. Dennis Ritchie did not create B. He created B to create C, right? He was already involved with A, right? At least in the languages he was involved with writing. But, he brought his full self to that project, right? He wasn't asked to do an extension to a compiler somewhere. He was writing a new language, right? That's a whole other thing.
Programmers. I've actually been researching and working on such a language for some years now in private, though it's still just in the idea phase. Let me know if this is interesting to you for a future video.
I love the vibe, except the solution at the end is more tooling. No, it's more of a philosophy and studying the people who have gone before and have used these tactics that we now use the tools. We use their mindsets. We've taken in their mindsets, right? They proved it to us. And this is just the process that only those people who are going after the dragon are going to be able to develop this stuff, right? So I like the fact that he's thinking about doing these things, but it's a couple steps back from the language you're writing in. It's the philosophical framework that you're developing these ideas, and for what purpose, right? Are you trying to show off somebody by making some kind of new programming language, or are you trying to solve a problem that this language is a bridge to, right? So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that stuff. I'm going to continue on a little bit more of this series until I'm going to do something else. But I hope this is getting clear about what adventure-driven development is about and who it's for and the kinds of people who may be attracted to it. And I'm Chris Athanas. Give me a like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.